Hi, I'm a local hippie, and today we're going to talk about a TikTok video. I think a lot of people have been talking about this lately, and I've watched myself a few videos of people reacting to this, um, and I wanted to talk about it because I do feel like not necessarily that this is important, but it kind of is. And the reason why I care so much about this is because it is important. Yeah, it is. Because it ties into the literacy video I did, I don't know, about a month or so ago, and just the conversation of literacy on YouTube in general. If you just look up literacy in America, you'll find a whole slew of videos talking about that. And this is something, like I mentioned before, that is very near and dear to my heart. Um, and though this message was a little, it was a little abrasive, I very much agree with what she said. Okay, so I'm going to put it up here just in case anyone who is watching this has never seen this TikTok. It's about a minute and a half ish long. I'm going to play it and then we'll come back and I'll share my thoughts.
I do not trust you little bitches on Booktok and your stupid Kindle Unlimited book recommendations talking about this is 5 stars. This is one of the best books I've ever read. Meanwhile, when I was 12 years old, I was reading One Direction fan fiction written by someone whose first language was not English on Wattpad, and it was still better written than half of the shit I'm seeing pushed out on Booktok. I'm gonna be the bitch and say it. Some of you need to go back to a high school level literature class because the lack of reading comprehension that I am seeing is scary. Talking about Guild or whatever the fuck it's called is a literary masterpiece. Almost as if when authors are using actual literary devices and, I don't know, nuance, not spelling things out for us.
So, right here with these first 2 points, in a lot of these Kindle Unlimited type books, these independently published books, they're just objectively not written well. Again, the way that she said it, you know, it was a little rough. It was a little rough, but it's true. And that's not being pretentious. That is just the truth. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, you know. So, I'm going to let the video play out, but and that's okay. Let me just say this. There's a place for books like that in a reader's, especially a voracious reader's diet. There is a place for the Kindle Unlimited sort of fast, easily digestible reading, because at the end of the day, it's still reading and you still have to decode the words, you still have to understand, you still have to comprehend, you still have to pay attention to some degree, maybe if it's not the same as if you were reading maybe Charles Dickens. Because if you tried to read Charles Dickens and that's all you ever read, like, yeah. Because I read to learn, I read for information, but I also read for entertainment, which is okay. And then the second point she made is within the realm of these books not being written well, a part of what makes them not well written is the lack of nuance. It's these writers literally having very little respect for their audience. And instead of showing you what happens, and in worst cases, telling you over and over and over again what has happened, they're just laying it out for you, which I don't find appealing, and it's kind of annoying because I got it the first time. You didn't have to, you didn't, it wasn't that complex of a theme the first time, so you didn't have to beat me over the head with it an additional 5 times type of situation. A part of what makes literature so compelling, so fluid, so beautiful, so potent is that a lot of the time you have to make something of it yourself because the author does not tell you how to feel, and they shouldn't. I love Dostoevsky because he absolutely, I've not read anything that he wrote where he was explaining to you how to feel. That is up to you. It is up to your interpretation. So those first 2 points right there, I absolutely agree with. Let's continue.
Like we're first graders, that I see a lot of the sentiment on social media being it was too confusing and too convoluted. Critical thinking, babes. Learn how to do it. I love a little fun romantic.
And then another topic is, and this is one of the things that I am most passionate about on my channel. This is why A Local Hippie is even here, is because people consider classic literature, for instance, convoluted, complicated, hard to read, and a lot of the time that is just not true. You don't have to be some genius to enjoy and to read classics. A lot of the time, the people who say these things don't even read classics, or they pick up the literal magnum opus of one of the greatest writers to ever pick up a quill or a pen or type on a typewriter, and they're like, this is hard. No shit. It's literally the Brothers Karamazov. It's literally Fyodor Dostoevsky's last work ever. Like, duh. It's a culmination of everything he ever wrote about. Every theme, every thread that was threaded through every other book he ever wrote was in that book. Of course, it's difficult. Of course, it is. That's the point. It's almost like that's the point, is that you're meant to think about these things. You're meant to ruminate over these things. You're meant to come out of this maybe even looking at the world a little bit differently. But there are other things like short stories, some of which I have spoken about on my channel. You know, Booktok, for example. I'm currently reading a nasty anecdote, and my laptop is dying. Give me one moment. I'm reading a nasty anecdote right now. White Knights, freaking poor folk, the double. I mean, even though I would read that a little bit later in my Dostoevsky journey as well. But the point being is that maybe if we just take the time to read, you know, smaller works by these authors, you won't come out of it feeling like you're so confused or like it's super difficult, instead of just because it's popular jumping into an author's magnum opus just because everybody else is doing it. You've never been exposed to them before. You don't know if you're going to like their style. You have no idea how you'll even feel about this book. You know, it, a lot of that is why people come out of reading classic literature or even just, more sophisticated literature in general, feeling like it's too much. And it's like, and then we confuse, you know, other types of fiction as being something that they are not. I have never read something on Kindle Unlimited that I would consider a masterpiece. Have I read things on Kindle Unlimited that were super entertaining, that I enjoyed, that I thought were 4 stars subjectively? Yes, that is completely different than the objective merit of classic literature. Let's just stick with the classics because those are the novels, the fiction that has endured time, that has endured centuries. So I do very much agree with what she's saying, but I also recognize that she is being a little bit abrasive and a little bit polarizing, but it's true.
Like, romantasy is one of my favorite genres. However, that does not mean that it has to be poorly written. And I'm just gonna say it, not everyone should have their book published. Sorry, I'm a bitch.
That, I say, I don't believe that's true. I feel like people should be able to make money. If they want to share their art, they should be able to share their art. That is a little pretentious, I will say. Anybody can share their art, anybody can share their writing and sell. And whether it's poorly written or not, there is a space in this reader sphere that fits these poorly written novels. As I said before, there is a place in a reader's diet for these sorts of stories. Everything you read does not have to be a classic. Everything you read does not have to be academic. Everything you read does not have to teach you something. You don't have to take something away from every single book you ever read. The importance of reading is reading itself and understanding and learning how to communicate and garnering empathy for not only the person who wrote the story but the characters that they made, these characters that they came up with. And that translates into real life. All of these things transfer into real life, not to mention how knowing how to read and being able to comprehend things is the gateway to teaching yourself anything you want to know, especially in today's day and age with the internet. And so I think the gist of this video is that Booktok can be unreliable because it's calling things incorrectly. I love a Kindle Unlimited book, but and I love romantasy and I love a very easy to digest book. But it is, for me, it is more important to recognize that every sort of story has a place in your diet. To be well read, you're going to read a little bit of everything. I don't think a person can call themselves well read or even a voracious reader if there's a limit to the kind of reading they will do. I think if you love to read, if you're a curious mind, you're going to read any and everything you can get your hands on. I used to be the kind of reader who said, I only want to read romance because that's like my core genre. It's the one that I like the most. But as I've grown and as I've gotten into reading, I read a little bit of everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, you know? So, and I think what she's trying to say here is just that we should stop calling these very simple, fun, easy books to read. We should stop calling them masterpieces, you know? And that oftentimes the same kinds of books are cycled around on Booktok, on Booktube, and there's not really a lot of diversity there. Um, Not a diversity of thought, not a diversity of taste, not a diversity of authorship, which I think is true. I think that is a valuable critique to both of those spheres, Booktok, Booktube. There's not a lot of diversity there. And at the heart of it, I think that is what she's saying. And I agree with that. But I can also say that we can't control that. It's up to every individual to decide what it is that they want to read, what they enjoy, and the media and the media personalities they want to trust when it comes to book recommendations. There are people who I will absolutely never ever take book recommendations from. Um on Booktube specifically, I don't have TikTok, but um and there are people who I'm like, anything that they say, I'm like, I'll give that a shot. And usually those are the creators who do have a more diverse um ecosystem of what they read. Just because that more closely relates to how I am as a reader. Like I said before, I'll read any and everything. So I do think that there was some truth to what Miss Maddie Clark said. But I also think that there is a place for the quick fast food kind of story, kind of novel, just for pure enjoyment, because everything you read can't be academic. Okay, you can't spend every second, every minute of every day being a big brain. Sometimes you just gotta, sometimes you just gotta put on the brakes on the Dostoevsky, on the Melville, on the Morrison, and sometimes you got to pick up a Lucy Score. You know, you got to pick up I don't know, some other kind of quick, fun novella from Kindle Unlimited. And like, come on, they're free. These are books that you can borrow. They're free. They're fun. They're easy to read. That all sounds great to me. Um, so yeah, those are my thoughts on that video. Let me know if you have any feelings about this video, or if you agree, if you disagree, down in the comments below. But I hope you have a good day. I hope you have a good evening. And most importantly, I hope you read a good book. And I'll see you when I see you. Bye.